I am from beyond. Listen, and all you desire will be yours. Welcome to Spider-Dan and the Secret Doors. Prepare for Prattle.
Secret Stories. Welcome to Prattle World. I am your host, the ever-amazing, ever-spectacular Spider-Dan. And in this podcast, I spotlight entertainment's best-kept secrets that a mainstream audience may find boring. And welcome back, guys. And I've got another top 5 for you today. And this was requested by a fan and friend of the show and guest of the show. This was requested by Andrew Knowles of Angry Andy Reviews. Make sure you check out his YouTube channel and his Facebook page. He does amazing reviews, he does unboxing, he does all sorts of stuff. You name it. He did a retrospective on The Empire Strikes Back recently for May the 4th. Absolutely fantastic. Lovely guy, lovely guest. And I love it when he gets angry, when he's got, my favourite videos of his. They're all good, don't get me wrong. They're all fantastic. But his best ones, if you get a really crap movie or one where he has a really negative opinion, all the passion just comes seething out of him, and it makes for a really entertaining video. So definitely check him out. Again, he's on Facebook, so you can read the reviews if you prefer to just read them, or you can watch the YouTube video. I argue the YouTube videos are better because you get a sense of how he feels and the passion he has against those films. So definitely check him out. So, riddle me this, Batman. What are the very best Riddler comics? Well, I have some answers for you. So, let's start. Let's just get straight into this. The Riddler is probably the most underappreciated, underrated, underexposed, well, maybe he's overexposed, who knows, Batman villain there is. Probably supervillains. I think a lot of people think that the Riddler is a cheap rip-off of the Joker, that, the gimmick is that he is like the Joker, but I'd argue the Joker is a very, very different character compared, like, the way that the Joker has evolved over time, and the way that the Riddler has evolved over time. The Joker is a homicidal maniac. You don't know what he's doing from one day to the next. However, the Riddler has a modus operandi. He always leaves riddles, or it's based on a riddle, or there's a puzzle or an enigma, or a conundrum or a death trap that you have to somehow figure out. There is method to his madness. The Joker has no method. It's one day he's squirting people with water, the next day he's squirting them with sulfuric acid. He's a very different character. Yeah, obviously riddles and jokes are probably not too far removed from each other, but I think that the essence of his character and who he is, and the riddle of his own, obsessive compulsive disorder is interesting. He's obsessive compulsive. He's an egotist. He loves himself. He has to be the smartest guy in the room or he loses his shit. He doesn't like people touching him. He doesn't like people coming near him. He's very specific and almost maybe on a autistic spectrum level. Like, he has to have things his way, and when he doesn't have them his way, that's when he loses it. And I personally prefer Riddler when he's not this kind of manic, when he's not like that. I think when he's suave and cool and calm, collected, when he wears a suit, that's the Riddler I like. The one who knows he's amazing, who knows he has all the answers. But really, it's all the questions that matter. It's the questions that hold the power, not necessarily the answers for him. And he's a fantastic character, and I've really got kind of, the whole world is probably familiar with his catchphrases and him being a Riddler. Jim Carrey's version in Batman Forever, Frank Gorshin from the Batman TV show, all good or bad in their own ways. But for me, like, when I think of all the Batman characters, and when I think of the classic version of those characters, I always go back to the Batman the Animated Series version of those characters. For me, those are the quintessential versions of those characters. And obviously, when you go into a comic book, it's not always the case. Obviously, they play around with the origins, they reboot them, they alter them here and there. And I like that. I like a different spin on the old characters. But when I think about those characters, when I think about the Scarecrow or Killer Croc or Ra's al Ghul, I will always go back to Batman the Animated Series, because they just nailed those characters so well, and so much that they become iconic in my mind that I can't not hear those voices, those voice actor voices, when I read those comics. And I can't remember who played him now in the animated series, but he's the same guy who was Lionel Luthor, and he also played the Floronic Man. It's Lionel Luthor in Smallville. He played the Floronic Man in Batman and Robin. Can't think of his name. And he was Dr. Sivana's dad as well. I can't remember his name. Don't worry about it. He's fantastic. I actually think that the Riddler's actually been portrayed better in animated projects. Batman Hush, the animated film. I liked, any version from any episode from Batman the Animated Series. I think it's If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Rich? And Riddler's Reform. And there's another one as well. I think it's a reality. What is reality? I'm going to say that's the episode. Those are, that's a nice little trilogy if you're looking for Riddler stories. Definitely check those out. Classic. I'm not sure where Batman the Animated Series is available. I think you can just buy it or download it on Amazon, perhaps. Go wherever you want to find it. But for me, I think that's it. I think the idea of the riddles kind of works a bit more away from the page. No, I disagree, actually. I'm disagreeing myself. No, you shut up. No, you shut up. And me. But yeah, let's get started. I think he's an interesting character. The Arkham games as well. Oh my God. Fantastic version of the Riddler in that. That's just... And again, written by Paul Dini, who was one of the main writers on Batman the Animated Series as well. So it just goes to show that version is, for me, that's the strongest version there's ever been. There's a lot of inspiration from the animated series in the Arkham games, and it shows. And it's a labour of love to me, because everybody loves that show. And you have to, because it's fantastic. So let's get started. So Andy, I'm bringing you the top 5 Riddler stories. And for the first one, I'm going to go all the way back. I believe it's the 1950s, I think this came out. Now, this is the Riddleless Robberies of the Riddler. This is from Batman Volume 1, 179, so going back some time now. So this was reprinted recently in the Batman Arkham, The Riddler. So that's a collection of basically single or 2-issue stories throughout the kind of the career and kind of length of the character throughout the 70 plus 80 years he's been around, however long it's been, starting from his first appearance all the way up to some of his more modern appearances in Rebirth or New 52. Definitely check it out. It's got some good stories in there. And this is probably the best one. This early tale features a recently escaped Riddler who's got out of prison, and Batman and Robin are expecting him to basically to give him a riddle, because that's what he does. That's who he is. He can't help himself. He can't help giving out these riddles. We'll just hang fire. We'll wait. He won't do. It's like a ransom. You've got to wait for a demand. There's no point just kidnapping somebody and not giving them a ransom. So they wait. And after escaping, the Riddler figures, why do I have to leave riddles? Why don't I just do these amazing capers, pull off these incredible crimes? Why does somebody have to know? Why do I have to claim? Why does it have to be me? Why does it have to be all about me? So he decides, I'm going to do robberies without leaving a riddle. That's going to be my new thing. So what he does, he gets a few psychology books, and he basically cure thyself of his, his affliction, of his psychopathy or his obsessive compulsive need to leave riddles and to be superior to Batman and the police. But someone is leaving clues for Batman. But who could it be? Who could it possibly be? If the Riddler's not doing it, then who could it be? Could it be another henchman? Could it be somebody else? Who is leaving these clues? And eventually Batman, slowly but surely, catches up to the Riddler, and the Riddlers can't believe it. He's like, how did you even know? How can you figure out where I'm going to be and what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it without any riddles? And Batman's like, well, we've had these riddles. Someone's been leaving us riddles. We thought it was you. And he's like, no, I said I swore off riddles. I will never riddle again. Yeah, he's kind of nonplussed. And then he realizes that subconsciously, when he's been going to sleep, he's having these kind of cat naps a lot. It's like, oh, I'm tired, I'm going to have another nap. In his kind of, he's almost sleep writing riddles and sending them to police, doing it without even consciously knowing what he's doing, which is kind of quite fascinating in a way. And he kind of walks away and gets locked up in absolute kind of disbelief that even though he made a conscious effort to not leave these riddles, subconsciously he is leaving these riddles. That is what he's doing. Like, this is the first kind of story that implied that he couldn't help himself, that he has to leave these riddles. Like, that's who he is. He can't. That's part of his DNA almost, that he has to leave these riddles. And, that it's this obsessive, compulsive behaviour. There's no way to stop that. And this was the first comic that really said that he had to. There was nothing before said that he, obviously he was this crazy, wild, wacky supervillain, but nothing said that he couldn't, stop or, it started to address his issues, his psychology and the way he is and the way he responds to the world and the stimulus and the stimuli that he's given. And it was fantastic. And I think it's quite ahead of its time, actually, in those kind of, those early tales for Batman. I wanted to have an early one, but I wanted to have one that was kind of a nice kind of twist. It's a short story, but, it's interesting enough. It's fun enough. It's got a lot of kind of, whiz-bang pop. Very, very, of that era kind of Batman story, but it's definitely a fun one and definitely worth kind of looking into. But yes, so moving on. Now, number 4 is Dark Knight, Dark City, from Batman Volume 1, 452 to 454. So yeah, we've jumped a few years since the first one. This is written by... did I say who wrote the first one? Oh, I didn't even write down who wrote the first one. That's bad, isn't it? Oh, well. So this one was written by Peter Milligan and with art by Kieran Dwyer. So this is quite a popular Batman tale. This has actually been reprinted 3 times, as far as I know. So that's reprinted in DC Comics Presents Batman, Dark Knight, Dark City, Batman, Dark Knight, Dark City, and Batman, the Caped Crusader. These are all available again on Comixology, or physical, or single issues if you want to hunt them out. So yeah, so this is definitely the most dark and disturbing Riddler story ever written, by far. Like, he is utterly maniacal in this one. And I think that's probably why it's the most popular, because it kind of feeds into that the darkness and the dark theming of the Batman stories at the time, the kind of reworking, rejigging characters. This is post crisis, so everything has been rebooted and reworked to give it a different feel. And Batman especially got a lot darker, even though it was fairly dark already. It got even darker. So yeah, it opens up with a character called Jacob Stockman and famous Thomas Jefferson and some other cultists, and they're attempting to summon a demon called Barbatos via a sacrifice. So this young girl has been hypnotized, drugged, and this is during the ceremony of the Bat. And this is on the outskirts of kind of old Gotham in 1762. So a very long time ago. Jump forward to modern day. We have the Riddler, and he finds the book, which is basically a diary from Stockman, who confesses to, doing all these horrible things, blood sacrifices and all this other stuff, and kind of explains how they did it and what they need to do to complete the ceremony, which they don't end up doing in the story because something happens, causes a fire, and they all have to run away. So they never kind of finish that ceremony. So the Riddler decides, after reading this diary, he's like, I'm going to finish this ceremony. I want this power. I want a demon at my beck and call. Why the fuck not? Yeah, not very Riddler-esque, this story, but still really, really good. So like I said, this is not your grandfather's Riddler. The modus operandi still is the same. He's still leaving riddles, but he is bloodthirsty in this. Like, he doesn't care whether you live or die. He is full on psychotic. He almost is a bit more like the modern Joker, or what I perceive the Joker to be in this story. For example, he drugs a woman to fall off a roof, deliver a message and fall off a roof, blows up his own henchman for no real reason, hangs a policeman, and then probably the most disturbing and memorable part of the story is that he places a ping pong ball down the throat of an infant child. Yeah, pretty fucked up, this story. But that's kind of what makes it interesting. There's a lot of kind of traps and death traps and situations that Batman has to find his way out of, and he almost causes Batman to kill children, to kill things. Like, all these innocent people are just dying left and right, all due to the kind of Riddler. You know, he kidnaps a whole bunch of infant children, and it's just dark and disturbing. And to be fair, it's a story dealing with, you know, a demon, so it's bound to be a little bit. But it kind of, what the Riddler manages to do is he actually manages to get Batman to do his dirty work. He gets him to collect all the rights for the ritual and helps to kind of almost give birth to this demon again, and to bring this demon into the world. Now, we do, like, the Riddler's kind of been sort of possessed and manipulated by the demon to complete this, these rituals and these rites to complete the ritual. So it's kind of hinted that he's not really in control. He's not really behind the driving wheel in the story. But it still makes for an entertaining read. It's dark and disturbing, but I sometimes like my Batman stories dark and disturbing and full of horror, you know, and he's fighting zombies and vampires and monsters and werewolves and stuff. You know, I like a good gothic Batman tale. That's, you know, it's part of who he is. And, you know, you can tell so many different kind of stories of Batman, and I think this is a really good one. Now, what's really interesting as well is at the end, it's hinted Batman speaks to the demon, or he believes he's speaking to the demon, at the very least, after being drugged. And the demon says that you get this monologue throughout about Gotham and about the Dark Knight and his creation, this unknown kind of monologue. And that turns out to be the demon, who is like, I am Gotham. The ritual made the demon kind of seethe into the bedrock of Gotham, and he affected the way it is. It affects the evil and the crime and the horrible stuff that happens in Gotham. And he says that Batman is his finest creation, basically, this dark, brooding avenger that guards Gotham from the worst. And he says, you would be nothing. You are not who you are without me. I created you. Finish this ritual and bring me back in full. And yeah, so it's quite an interesting kind of idea. You know, you can take it with a pinch of salt. You can believe it, or you can not believe it. You know, you can believe the Riddler was behind it. You can believe the demon was behind it. Who knows? It's up to you. But it's a fun read, fun gothic horror. You know, it's like, you know, Seven or something, almost kind of that sort of storyline, with a lot more kind of mysticism and occult rituals and sacrifices and, you know, demonic elements. But it's a really good story, really fun, and I like it. Again, you might not see it. This is probably the least Riddler-esque story there is, but I felt that it was so unique and so famous and so, you know, almost controversial or infamous that I kind of had to include it. And I like it personally. I understand if other people don't, but this is definitely one of my favourites. Okay, next up is A New Dawn from Batman Confidential Volume 1, 26 to 28. This is written by Nunzio De Filippis, Christina Weir, with art by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. This is reprinted in, I think, a better title for it is Batman King Tut's Tomb. So this storyline reintroduces a silly Batman villain from the Adam West TV show. So this was, if you remember King Tut, he was this crazy guy who thought he was a reincarnated Egyptian pharaoh, fat guy, white guy. And was always kind of a bit of a silly-esque Batman villain. So what they do here is they revamp and reintroduce this character who's a museum curator who took a bump on the head and is a bit more like deadly. Has deadly weapons, is physically very capable, not fat anymore, gives Batman a run for his money. And he has a hobby of giving out riddles before he kills people or before he injures them. During this story, he's killed a couple of people, and Batman's struggling to find connections or predict where the next person is going to be killed or murdered, or, you know, what the riddle is going to be left, or, you know, where it's going to be put. But yeah, the people, he either leaves a note or he leaves leave somebody alive to give the riddle to, and lead them into the clue of where and what's going to happen next. So straight away, Batman's like, well, it's riddles, so let's go and see Mr. Enigma, shall we? He was like, yeah, of course, yeah, they're riddles. Gordon's like, yeah, oh yeah, that guy. So they go, and Riddler's like, what the hell? Someone's leaving riddles, and it's not me. This will never do. So he's like, right, we must team up. Get me out of this cell, and I'll come and help you. And Batman's like, absolutely not. I'm not having a criminal like you run around and be potentially dangerous in the city currently. And he's like, well, no, but I can predict them. And he does actually manage to predict them. But they think he's behind it, or he's working with someone, or he's managing to escape his cell every time. So there's no trust there, absolutely. And then the Riddler turns up at one of the crimes and confronts King Tut himself. And they have a fight, and then Batman jumps in and attacks the Riddler because he thinks he's the perpetrator, and he's like, no, there's a guy here, look, it's King Tut. It's like, oh, right. So yeah, and they begrudgingly decide to team up together. This is a really good story, because I think there's a lot of good stories out there where the Riddler is not potentially a villain, but more a supporting character, like Long Halloween, or some of the Paul Dini stories, like Enigma Consulting Detective, which is also in Batman Arkham, the Riddler, and Gotham City Sirens as well. He plays the detective role in that as well. But yeah, I think he does work quite well as a supporting character. It doesn't work as well like when the Batman teams up with the Joker, because it'll never work out, but there's a potential that, he's a bit more amenable, he can talk to him, he can communicate on a level. And it's almost like a buddy cop movie, and it works really well, kind of like 48 Hours. Think 48 Hours, but with more riddles and more Egyptian theming. But it's really good, and the banter is so on point. There's so much fun. It's like a great bit where the Riddler's like... it was like, yeah, I know that. Like, Batman's he's trying to tell Batman something. He's like, oh, that's from this and from this. And he was like, I know. And he's like, I don't just punch people, I am a detective, And Riddler's like, yeah, we can do this more often. I can be your new Robin. And he's like, yeah, sure. And like, get in the car, like, to the Batmobile and things like that. But obviously, things are always as they seem in these stories, which is the same with any kind of Riddler story. There may be more questions asked or more riddles, but it's a fun read. It's a nice short read. The art is gorgeous. Jose Garcia, oh gosh, I've forgotten his name already. Jose Luis Garcia Lopez is a classic Batman artist. Nolan, I think it's Kevin Nolan on inks, so it kind of has a little bit of that as well. But he's an artist that's been in DC, Superman specifically, and Batman, the two big ones he drew, and it's great to see him working on this. And this is just an excellent story. It's a fun story, and there's a lot of fun to be had. The Riddler obviously trying to be the smartest guy in the room, and trying to outdo the police. King Tut, James Gordon, Batman, he's trying to stay one step ahead as well, and it's a really interesting story, and it goes in some different places, and it was nice to see the Riddler in this kind of role, in a really good story in this role. Absolutely love the story. I think I actually bought it when I was with you at Wales Comic Con, Andy. Nobody else will remember this, but but yeah, I think I bought it then. So it was a really good story and worth getting, clearly, because it made my list. Right, moving on. So this is we're on number 3 now? Number 3. So this is Questions Multiply the Mystery. This is Detective Comics Annual Volume 1, Issue 8 from 1995. This was a year where they were doing basically year 1 stories. So it was all set around the kind of Batman Year 1 era, usually the first appearance, or their origin story. So I think they did one for Poison Ivy, Scarecrow, maybe Two-Face as well, possibly. There is a collection of all those annuals. Can't think off the top of my head what it's called. 4 of a Kind, maybe? Batman 4 of a Kind? Go for that. Anyway, so this is written by Chuck Dixon and with art by Kieran Dwyer again. So Chuck Dixon is one of the best Batman writers of the 90s. He wrote almost all, him and Greg Rucka, I think, were probably two of the most prolific writers. Ed Brubaker as well, and a few other kind of Batman writers. There's a lot of Batman titles and spin-off titles and characters, as you all know, but those are the ones I kind of think about when I'm thinking about 90s Batman, good 90s Batman. And Batman was really good in the 90s, so there was a lot of good stuff. So fair enough. So this is basically, it starts with the Riddler in the cell, and the psychologists are questioning him, they're trying to figure him out, psychoanalyze him, and figure out why he does what he does, who he is, what's his backstory, why did he come to this, what childhood trauma could have brought about this obsessive compulsion for riddling and puzzles and crosswords and all this sort of stuff. So we find out that it is an origin story. So he reveals his origin to them. So he was an unnoticed child from everybody. Nobody ever noticed him, including his parents. And he always wanted a way that he could get people's attention. He craved that need for attention. And look at me, look how great I am, look how smart I am. I'm the best. So he found out that the school were having a competition about who would be the quickest to put a puzzle together. So they would go in a room, they would be timed, and the kid that came away with putting the puzzle together the quickest would win the prize. Enigma, knowing that he wouldn't be able to do that, he snuck into the school, took a photo of the jigsaw puzzle, and then practiced putting it back together again. And he got quicker and quicker and quicker, and then the day of the competition, he did it in no time at all, and won the prize. And the prize was a book of puzzles, crosswords, word searches, conundrums, riddles, puzzles, you name it. Just one of those kind of old school puzzle books. And he loved it, and he got obsessed, and he wanted to know everything. Now, what's not mentioned in this story, but it's mentioned in quite a lot, is that he suffered from child abuse. Like, his dad would beat him when he thought he was outsmarting him or cheating, even though, Eddie was very intelligent. I'm not sure if that's maybe a later thing, maybe a New 52 or a Rebirth thing, or more details would come out, but it's not mentioned here. And I think it's kind of good that it isn't. I don't think every supervillain needs to have a childhood abuse story. There is a lot of those kind of knocking about. It's like, he's evil. Oh, it must have been child abuse. And then they're beaten by their parents and stuff. I think obviously it's a horrible thing for any child to go through, but I don't think that should always be the reason for supervillains to become supervillains. I think you've got a lot more ways to tell that story. Anyway, so he becomes obsessed and starts doing sleight of hand magic tricks. Obviously, he gets more attention, but he also gets more attention from the bullies now than he ever did. Eventually, he grows up and he's a delivery man. He's working, again, craving that attention, being bored. He decides that he has to feed his egomania, and he realizes that he can actually construct very elaborate thefts and burglaries. So he manages to do all that, and he gets away with it. And he stands there and he's waiting for people to turn up to try and catch him, so he could outsmart them again. And he's like, "What's the point in this? This is my best work. This is incredible. Why is no one seeing this? Why is no one appreciating that I'm the most amazing criminal ever?" And so then he gets the idea that he's going to create a persona, and he's going to leave notes for the police. And then Lieutenant Gordon starts getting them. He's like, what is this? What am I supposed to do? He bumps into his two henchwomen, Query and Echo, and hires them in. And they're these kind of dominatrixy type dressed criminals. I guess. I believe in another story there is a dominatrix club that Batman and the Riddler go to at one point, and he says that they used to frequent there. So again, he starts to manage to pull off these robberies as well and leave the riddles, and the persona of the Riddler gets him kind of more. Basically, he steals $1 million or something. He gets away with $2 million. So all the criminals are initially the criminal community are you're an idiot, you're weird. Why would you leave them clues? Why would you tell them who you are and where you're going? It doesn't make any sense. And they start turning around and actually go, bloody hell, you've stole $2 million. Oh, we need you, or we'll hire you, or you can plan our things. We'll join your gang and things like that. So he becomes quite the notable, infamous character in Gotham. And they've got the strong arm. He's got the strong armed muscle with Query and Echo. They're good at martial arts. They do all the things he can't, basically, which is cool. I like that he has kind of almost like two Harley Quinns, if you will. Before Harley Quinn was even a thing. Yeah, it's a really good story. It's fun. And it's a good origin story. I think everyone loves a good origin story, and this is the best Riddler origin story. You can buy it. You can again buy the single issue itself as well on eBay or Amazon. Should be able to find it somewhere. But yeah, really good story. Obviously, he's caught by Batman at the end. He's kind of he becomes obsessed with Batman as well. He becomes obsessed with outsmarting the man who outsmarted him. And it becomes like a massive game of chess for him. Like, how many moves ahead is he, or how many moves behind is he? And what if you do this? And how do the riddles, every riddle has a riddle within itself for him. And in the end, he's kind of, when he's captured, he's kind of sat in his cell and he's trying to figure out the riddle of his own insanity, which is an answer he may not never get. He may not ever find the answer to his own insanity. Fantastic story by a fantastic Batman writer. Would expect no less from Chuck Dixon. Definitely check that out. Any Chuck Dixon stuff is good shit for me, Batman-wise. All the Robin stuff, the Tim Drake Robin series is really good. Anything by Chuck Dixon. Did some good Punisher stuff as well. And other stuff. He's written G.I. Joe, I think, in recent years. But yeah, awesome writer with some awesome work, and that is definitely one of his best. Okay, number 1. So this is the best Riddler story. Now, this is quite a recent one, and it is considered, a lot of people said when this started, they went, you know what? The Riddler has finally got a good story. The Riddler has finally got a good story. And that's not fair, because there are other good Riddler stories. But this is the one that they point out as the best. And with good reason. So this is 0 Year. So this is from Batman Volume 2, 23 to 27, and issues 29 to 33. So this is basically a reimagining of Year 1. So this is not, for me, this is not only the best Riddler story, but one of the best Batman stories as well. Forget Year 1. Forget Batman Year 1. That hasn't happened. This is Batman Year 0, or 0 Year. So Bruce Wayne comes back. It's a new reinterpretation of the origin. It's a new take. It's new ideas, new everything. Bruce Wayne starts back. He's starting his battle against the criminal underbelly of Gotham. For example, he's battling the Red Hood gang, which is really cool. And obviously the Red Hood number 1 turns into somebody else. I won't spoil it, but you probably know. So yeah, you've got that, and there's a few other characters, like you get Penguin's in it a little bit. There's a character called Dr. Death as well, who's quite an obscure kind of Batman villain, like an early obscure Batman villain, like a Hugo Strange or a Mad Monk. He was around like in the early 30s before like the Joker and Catwoman and all those characters came along. But he's really disturbing in this story, my God. But yeah, so basically all those characters are there, and they're doing what they're doing, but actually behind everything, moving those chess pieces again, it's a Riddler. He is pulling all the strings. He's puppeteering everything, every little thing that happens, and he is so many steps ahead of Batman. It's ridiculous. This is a young Batman. This is an inexperienced Batman who doesn't know his modus operandi, can't predict things, can't work stuff out, and has to try and work his way, and it's a difficult thing, and he's constantly failing, and that's what this whole story is about. Is Batman is constantly failing, and then maybe that's what he kind of realizes within the story, is like, it's not about winning, it's about constantly failing and just carrying on, almost getting killed and keep going. Basically what happens is the Riddler manages to take control of Gotham, like the entire city grid. It can power stuff on, power stuff off. He's got all these kind of death traps laid about. He has these drones with massive guns, shooting people with these massive chain guns and everything. And everything that has come before this was leading up to this. And of course, he's in control of Gotham. He's used Poison Ivy, Pamela Isley, because he's not Poison Ivy just yet, but used her formula, and Gotham is now has no power, no running water, and it's overgrown with these plants. Like, it looks like a post-apocalyptic kind of world, post-apocalyptic nightmare. And it's a great story. It's just so good. It's Scott Snyder doing what he does best. He's one of the best modern Batman comic writers there is. Court of Owls, Death in the Family, and then he followed it up with this, which is also bloody excellent. And he makes the Riddler this... He's a genius. He's a computer genius. He can hack into everything. He just knows the ins and outs of everything. He's so clever. In this story, he's smarter than Batman. He's smarter than ever. He is. deep down, that's it. He is genius level. I love that this whole thing is just orchestrated by him. And again, he's this suave, collected, suit-wearing, genius who, even after all this, after, getting control of Gotham and maybe even destroying Gotham at one point in the story, he still has to prove his intellect. He still has to prove his smarts to everybody. So what he does, he says, if anyone can give me a riddle I can't answer, then, you can have the city back. Those are my rules. Play by me. It's almost like he's kind of like, it's a less bloodthirsty Saw, like Jigsaw from the Saw movies. It's almost like that. You have to play these games and follow the rules. But that's the thing with the Riddler, is he sometimes cheats as well. So that's the interesting thing. When even when he's losing, or it looks like he might lose, he might cheat. So, and I quite like that with Two-Face as well, when he actually does kind of cheat. When he cheats the coin, technically, kind of, like plays within his own rules. But that's the great kind of thing about this story, is that he's a match for Batman. He is more than a match for Batman, and I think this story proves it. This is kind of like, we're talking like 12 issues or so. This story covers or something. I think it's 12 issues. But this is a whole year. This is a year of Gotham. It's not a usual story. It's very bright and vibrant. It's very pop arty. It's not a dark, grim, disturbing kind of. There is that element. There are those elements because there's Batman, but there's a lot. It's a lot of bright colours as well, and it's nice to see that. And I loved Year One. Don't get me wrong, but I think this is a really, really good, one of my favourite reinterpretations of his origin. Which there's not like there's 10 a penny of Superman, 10 a penny of Batman. They're trying to do new spins on it, but this is the one that actually does something and does it interesting and tells a great story, a new story. It's something different. We see a lot of Gotham in daytime, which is something you very rarely see in a lot of Batman comic books. I love it. I thought it was great. The artwork is gorgeous by Greg Capello. Capello? It's just brilliant. And it's great to see him as this kind of technological terrorist, the Riddler, in this. But you can't, and it's just suave, and he's so overconfident and so arrogant, and he's just so relaxed in it. And that's what I like. And then it's only after, again, he's so relaxed and calm, but then when he loses, or when he loses his cool, or when he looks like they're going to outsmart him, it looks like someone's going to win, that's when I like it. That's when he breaks that cool, I'm the best, I'm the top ranked in the class, I've got the best marks, that kind of person, the kind of snobby, prefect, that brown nosing to the teacher type. That character, like a Randall from Recess or something. I don't know why I pulled that reference out my arse, but there you go. But it's a fantastic story. If you just want a good Batman story, go here. It's really, really good. You want a good Batman origin story that is not Year One, go for 0 Year, because it's just great. And it's nice to see the Riddler at the height of his powers, like the best he can possibly be. Right, that is my top 5. Andy, I hope you liked it. I hope everybody else enjoyed it. I hope you're going to delve into some Riddler-esque stories, Edward Nigma stories. I'm looking forward to seeing him in the new Batman movie. I know he's been cast, so I hope they're going to do something that the interpretation of the Riddler I prefer. I do hope that. But I'm going to give you some more honourable mentions. I do have quite a few, actually. So, Catwoman, When in Rome. It's a really good story that is written and drawn by the same team from Long Halloween and Dark Victory. And it's set between the two stories. And it follows Catwoman kind of finding out about her parentage and who her family are. Which is really good. Riddled from Detective Comics 705 and 707. So this features the Clue Master, who is, we say the Joker's, say the Riddler's a rip-off of the Joker. The Clue Master was designed to be a rip-off of the Riddler. And they decide to team up. But obviously, the Riddler doesn't particularly like the idea that he steals all the stuff, steals all his panache and all his shtick. Doesn't like him stealing his shtick. So he decides to strap a bomb to him, and Batman and Robin and Oracle have to figure out the riddles before he dies. We've got Solitaire, which is a sequel to 0 Year from Batman Volume 2, 23.2. So this is it's all told from the Riddler's perspective, and he kind of breaks into Wayne Enterprises. And yeah, it's interesting because you get to see kind of the inside of how he works and when he holds grudges and how he can just literally just saunter through. It's kind of like a heist comic, which is really good as well. It's an interesting kind of tale for the Riddler, and to see him in that role. Check that one out. The Riddle Factory is where he has a game show and is revealing saucy secrets about Gotham's elite class and the people that make the most money, and they end up because of that, they end up either killing themselves or they end up dead in one other reason. I think one of them is having an affair, so his wife kills him. Hush, Batman Hush, obviously. Again, I won't spoil that too much if you're not aware of it. Nightfall, there's a couple of nice Riddler issues. There's a common element of Riddler stories where they're constantly kind of make him the loser villain, which I think is unfair, but if you like a loser villain story, it's pretty good in Nightfall. Gotham City Sirens, so that's kind of the Enigma consulting detective stuff. Riddle Me That is where they give the Riddler kind of a sexy makeover, and that's from Legends of the Dark Knight, 185 to 189. I think if I remember rightly, he kind of gets away with the whole thing. Who knows? So these are a couple I haven't read, but I've heard are good. The War of Jokes and Riddles, which is kind of a gang war between the Joker and the Riddler. Run, Riddler, Run. Again, I'm not too familiar with that one, but I've heard it's pretty good. Secret Origins Special #1 by Neil Gaiman. So if you're familiar with Neil Gaiman, he does like a little mini comic, mini story about the Riddler, and it's quite good, and you actually leave with more questions than answers. So that's how well it's written. Impulse Volume 148. So the Riddler, after No Man's Land, decides to come to where Impulse lives. I think it's one of the cities, Gateway. One of the Flash cities, maybe. Wherever he lives. And basically, Impulse is a stupid kid, and he's trying to answer these riddles, but he can't answer the riddles, and it just really frustrates Nigma, and it's really funny. And he's like, oh yeah, if you don't answer my riddle, I'm going to blow up this guy. And he's like, oh, here's the bomb, by the way. Zip, zap, zap. Is that quick? And he's like, no, but my riddle, no, answer my riddle. So it's quite a funny, humorous tale. If you want to see the Riddler really frustrated like a stupid kid, it's a fantastic little story. So yeah, that's it. Again, hope you enjoyed that, Andy. It's definitely worth it. I had a lot of fun kind of researching this. So yeah, it was a good blast, and I have a newfound love for the Riddler, which I didn't think I would have at the end of this. So give it a go. I mean, he's an old enough character that he's got enough stories, but those are the ones I'd recommend. So you guys can find me at Facebook, so that's at Secret Balls on Facebook. Twitter, it's at Dan_Balls. Instagram, SpiderDan Secret Balls. The podcast is available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, many, many more. And if you'd like to donate towards the podcast, you can buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/SpiderDan the Secret Balls. And don't forget to use the hashtag #PrepareForPrattle. Goodbye, everybody.